Welcome to Staffing Stories, hosted by Andy Moss. Andy has been in the staffing industry for over 25 years, first as a recruiter, then eventually an account manager and business owner. This is the podcast where we sit down with fellow staffing owners to get the real stories of the successes, the failures, and the lessons learned along the way.
Welcome to Staffing Stories. My name is Andy Moss, and I'm super excited today because I've got one of my favorites on, Matt Furman from Core Group, from the great state of Texas. There he is.
Welcome. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having
me. Glad to have you. Now, I'm in Tennessee, so we're the real UT. I don't know if you're a Texas fan or not, but
you know, it's funny. I'm 10 years into Texas from Georgia. So I'm a Georgia boy originally, so kind of UGA, but I've got two kids in Texas, so I've like my blood has transferred into the Lone Star State. So, but I'm burrowing in. I haven't picked a side yet. You know, A&M or UT. You know,
well, you're in Houston, that right? Isn't that right?
Yeah, Houston. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us where you're at and kind of what you're doing.
I'm Matt Furman. I'm run Core Group Resources, which is based in Houston, Texas, and we focus on the kind of the maritime and offshore energy world down here. Been in the recruitment business since 2006. Fell in love with the helping people find jobs business. You know, it's a mission field, and you know, as a kid, my parents lost their jobs at a critical time. So I think I fell in love with the mission of helping people find work, right? And so there's this undercurrent of connectedness on mission, and that kind of transcends through the whole company. We do executive search, crew up ships, offshore drill ships. You know, we do onshore staffing. Kind of a little mix, but that marine offshore is our core niche.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how did you get drug into, did you know somebody in staffing, or did you just kind of fall into it? I mean, who was the one that brought you into this?
You know, it was a total random event. Like most, you know, you get into, I was working at the Port of Miami doing terminal operations and bored out of my mind, watching longshoremen do work. They did all the work. I just sat there and watched them. I'm like, there's got to be a better way. And I was on my phone talking to friends, 3,000 hours a month. And I started doing these personality profile tests, strength finders, and to kind of discovered I needed to be in HR and sales. And I'm like, okay, well, where do I put all this, you know, college football energy as a linebacker? And this recruiter job popped up, and I'm like, you know, it's sales and it's HR and it's woven into one, you know? So I'm like, I'll give it a run. You know, I'll take a huge base salary cut and, you know, throw some commission on top and let's see what happens, you know? And so I ended up working for a British company in 2006 and kind of trained under the Brits for like the better part of 6 years. And just fell in love with the business. But then, like anything, you're in it for 5 years and you just get stuck, you know?
It's in your blood. I've always told people, it's like, if you're in staffing more than 2 or 3 years, it is in your blood. And you have to, it is a mission field. You have to have something more than just the dollars that keeps you in this. You have to enjoy it. I mean, it's kind of, you know, say you have to have a little bit of crazy to do this. But, you know, I do think the athlete trend is very prevalent in our industry. There's so many collegiate athletes. I played collegiate baseball, and some of the things that I learned playing the sport, you played football. I couldn't find another industry that really gave me that game time feel. Is that the way you feel a little bit?
Oh yeah. It's, you know, playing linebacker, you read chaos, right?
Very well.
You react to open pockets, and it's a gift. And so with the people business, you're moving through people, relationships, the challenge of like relational matchmaking. It's a dynamic environment that's, you know, way better than selling pins and widgets. just because of the rewards on the other side. And so, yeah, the college drive, like you in baseball, right? Baseball is a process, right? Where you continue to remove errors and issues from a process in order to get to a perfected game. And so the same thing with recruitment is you're building this funnel and it's a process, and you might fail 70% of the time, but the 30% hits you make is the reward, of the business and the cash you make. And so for sure, college athletes, I always used to joke with, there's a financial advisor. He goes, I only hire Division III athletes. And I was like, really? He's like, yeah. He's like, D3. Yeah. He goes, because it's not about the money or the fame. It's just for the love of the sport, Yeah. And so, it's a real thing in this business.
I find the mindset of who I hire in the recruiting industry. We've had athletes. We've had my stories. One of my best recruiters was in the dance ballerina industry. And so it's just when you compete, our industry is very competitive. We beat our heads against the wall. We have to understand that loss, when you play a sport, it's great to feel the win. And that's what keeps us in this. And we get a placement. It's like that win, but we also understand when you get hit in the throat, you got to get back up and, another play. But that's interesting. I just know and when I talk to other owners, it's crazy how many are ex-athletes. Yeah. Just the mindset. So
you're right. It's the competition and drive to push through the veil. No one's waking up one morning like, oh man, I want to go cut Matt a $30,000 check, right? They just don't. You have to go earn that. You have to push through, and add value in your service in order to receive. And it takes a will to win drive in our business. It really does. Like you said, the ballerina, we look at people who've had their family wheel collapse,
went through a struggle, went through something tough,
right. Yeah. And then they had to overcompensate to step in. We just recently, and this is going to be good if this is for staffing stories and staffing owners, but you got to have your teeth kicked in somewhere else by someone else before, this isn't the place to kind of come learn what a real job is, you got to go do that somewhere else. Then you come in here and, but the will to win is really hard to interview for, it really is.
There's, some of the best questions I've, asked in interviews, tell me a time where you failed and what happened, boy, that gets the rock going down the hill. It's, I've had, individuals get very emotional, but that's what I want. I'm trying to draw that out because, man, if they've had to do it, like you said, get their teeth kicked in, I want to know what that was, because you're going to have it with us. It's just part of it.
Yeah.
But, you came from the maritime, you're in a very niche industry. Your company is a very niche one. It's very exciting to hear about, but tell me how you found I know you're, you come from that world, but just kind of walk me through how you got there.
Yeah. So, I was kind of on the fence. I was looking at the service academies, Air Force Academy, and this place called the United States Merchant Marine Academy. And I just was like, what's this ship stuff, And I was going to get to play football at the academy. And I was like, and I could have played football at Air Force. And I was like, I don't know. It's just the adventure of the unknown. And so, I just pulled the trigger, followed the football in, and then just learned how to sail on old rusty merchant vessels. As a college kid, they throw you on a ship with just a bunch of old salty mariners for a year straight. And you come off those things. You show up as an 18-year-old kid, and you come off learning what not to do at scale in a very short period of time. And you pop off with all this life wisdom, and then you get out, graduate, I was a naval officer. You do your Navy duties, and then I got into the maritime business. But then somehow, a maritime job popped up in the town that I was working in just by random chance. Maybe call it God's providence or whatever. But it's the window opened, and I took it, and they were looking for a maritime recruiter. I happened to be a maritime guy who just did a personality profile on myself, saying, hey, this might be a good business. And so just all these stars aligned, and I just walked through the door. just got into it, you know, and like any business, you know, and especially in the mid 2000s, I mean, it was very much like there was no CRM. It was Outlook. That was it. And, your cell phone and your memory, you know? And
I remember, I remember my first week. This is back when we went to job fairs like every other week. And I mean, there was a stack this high. It dropped on my desk. It's just start calling. And that literally was how I learned. It's just going through a stack of resumes. And we at the time had to like scan them, send them to somewhere in some other state to get put in our ATS system. And I look at some of the recruiters these days, go, man, you guys have it so easy. It just parses in, it automatically populates the applicant tracking system. And, technology these days is light years from where it was. I mean, I started in 97. We had a pager. I mean, literally I had to wear a pager to, on my night to do that. And I was like, no one know what a pager is these days.
Yeah. So you starting in the 90s was, I've hired I've got a couple guys here that started in the 80s and 90s, and the stories they hear about, the faxing of resumes.
Oh yeah.
And it's just cold sourcing, like, what do you know? Do you know what cold sourcing is? Like with like Pride, like
Yeah.
you've called the main line of a company and just worked your way through the darkness to the right person's desk that happens to have the job title. Like that's like old school tactical phone warfare, cold sourcing. And I'm like, you're hired. Like that's an art that's died that we need here.
We used to play a game where we get one resume, and we used to do it on Fridays, and we'd see how many candidates that we could get to from that one resume. Like literally,
like how to spider,
like tree it. And we, you get to 20 by one. I mean, it was just, nowadays getting to that second, third, fourth layer of somebody from just one name is an art. It's a skill, but we had to do it day in and day out because we didn't have Career Builder, Monster, Zip, LinkedIn, any of that. But with technology, it's actually gotten exciting because we have the reach to get into places and people that we never had before as recruiters. So I think that's made our industry so much better for the young recruiters coming in, is because they get to talk to so many people. I mean, I struggled to get to people to talk to. Now it's like, well, you open your inbox, you got 50 people to talk to.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's, the digital era has definitely changed the way in which information moves. But the cool thing is, no matter how much you hear about AI and all this different stuff, like it's still a people-to-people business.
Absolutely.
That's just never going to change. Now, getting to those people-to-people, right, is faster. So you leverage technology, but where a lot of recruitment agencies, where recruitment agencies fail is if they're in the mindset of like, technology, we're going to take the recruiter out of it, fail. Or actually, we don't need technology. We're just going to keep doing the things the way we've been doing them, fail. Now, if you say, no, I'm going to use technology to accelerate my recruiters,
yep,
that's the win. That's your sweet spot, honey hole.
Yeah. I've always taken the focus with my business is if I make my recruiters better, everybody gets better. It's a relationship business, but focus on those recruiters, give them the tools they need, give them the instruments to do surgery, and everything will be fine. That's the approach I've taken. I don't know if you feel that way, but sitting in the recruiter chair, I think you've sat in the recruiter chair. I think most owners have run a desk before. It may be in an eon era that's a little bit different than today, but it all goes back to you got to get them on the phone. We may use a lot of different things to get them on the phone. Like nowadays, texting is huge. 90% open rates. Yeah, I'll text all day, but I mean, I'm going to get them on the phone. It's still a phone business.
It's still a phone business. And, it's, if you're thinking you're going to text and email all day, you're 50% of a phone caller. Yeah. It's phone, if you want to build 200,000 in a year, you're going to be phone and text and email. If you want to build 100,000 in a year, you're just going to stay on your email and text, right? That's your choice, as a recruiter. And it's night and day. You see a recruiter, you hear the quote, silent billers, they just kind of email all day long and somehow put deals together. Well, generally, unless you get a real special like digital savant, they're going to be about half the billings of someone who hits the phones.
Yeah. And I totally agree. Walk me through. I mean, I looked at your, background a little bit. You've got a beautiful family, by the way, on your website. They all look fairly young. Did you start with young kids in this business? I've got 4 kids now. They're 20 and 18. But when I started this business, I had newborn twins. Walk me through kind of having a family in the staffing world and just how all that juggling match works, because I'm kind of curious, more selfishly.
So 4 kids. If you look back on the calendar when not to start a staffing industry, I picked probably the date and time just after my my 3rd kid. We had a 3rd kid newborn. We had 3 kids under the age of 4, and I'm like, let's start a staffing agency. Let's just do it. Yeah. And it was brutal. I mean, it was. I made the worst decision in the world to start the business out of my house with a bunch of little kids, because you're banging on the French glass, like, Daddy, what are you doing? You hear all their toys banging around. You're trying to concentrate. You've got 30 grand in the bank. That's it. Just bought this brand new house, and you've got 4 kids and a stay-at-home wife, and you're like, high torque, let's go. And it was I would call it an unhealthy time, but you step out in faith, and somehow, money shows up if you put the work in. Now, it was a lot of calls and a lot of energy, but it probably took 3 months to close my first deal. And then, we got another one and another one. It started to roll. And then we had another kid, a 4th kid, right in the middle of the first year, and so then we've got 4 kids under the age of 5, and I'm hiring a bunch of people that, if you don't hire people with the right core values, you get all kinds of chaos. So it was chaos on both sides. I probably looked 5 years older 10 years ago than I do now, during that period. What I tell people, like, if you got a young family, do not start a staffing or recruitment business out of your house. Just don't do it.
Don't do it.
Go get a sublease, go to a neighbor's house, like loft,
A buddy has an extra room.
Somebody. Yeah. Do not do it in the house. Do not do it. Yeah.
I that brings back flashbacks to me. I mean, I started with 3 under the age of 2 because we had twins. And when I went to my wife and said, "Hey, I'm starting my own business," she was like, okay. And, what was clear to me doing wasn't clear to her. But, man, without her supporting that whole thing, I mean, really getting behind it at the end is huge. Spouses are very underrated with staffing owners because they get the brunt of the pain we feel. I don't know how your wife is, but mine, talking about salty old mariners. I mean, she was, she has taken the licks.
Yeah, it's a tough business. It's an emotional business, right? There's highs, there's lows. There's huge wins, there's huge disappointments, and there's just this emotional rift that it's not like any other business. And so, yeah, when you're having a bunch of kids, your wife is there as a support, and to push, but also it's tough, for the longest time. I say I've been in business for 10 years. The first 5 years of business, I brought the war blade right through the front door and slammed it on the dinner table. It's like talking about business and never turning it off.
Yeah.
And I started one thing I did about 5 years ago is I mode shifted. I just was like, you know what? Like, I'm just going to this this home realm, I'm going to leave it as such.
Yeah.
And I'm going to leave the war blade at the front door. And I'm just not going to even talk about work. I did like a mental separation, got into some business groups to kind of pour into them, use them as the outlet, and just kind of started protecting the home. And that was actually one of the best things I did in running the business, is protecting my wife from, like you said, the exhaust from the machine, you're running.
Talk to me a little bit about your business groups. That's something that I hear a lot with owners. I'm part of C12, which is a business group.
Dude, I'm a part of C12.
Are you really?
Dude, look at this. Look at my shirt. You see that?
There's my sticker.
No way.
Yeah. So
Seriously?
I didn't realize that, but it's important to me. And when I found that, I was craving, a faith leadership in our business, but also just the business fraternity to help change my mission and company.
Yes.
But do you recommend those to other staffing owners or other owners?
Oh, I mean, it was night and day. I mean, the fact not knowing you were C12, but I went into C12 5 years ago, and it's night and day. I mean, it's, you put God at the center of your business. You learn from other mistakes, other people are making. It just accelerates your decision making. And then you realize, Andy, Matt, we're all like, hiring people is an issue, firing people is an issue, chasing cash is an issue, technology is an issue. It's just this continuum.
Oh yeah.
But you're like, you know what? I'm not alone. And then you learn how other people are dealing with it. And then you're like, okay, because the lie is I'm alone. The truth is not. Yeah. And then having people to bounce stuff off of is a big thing. So yeah, C12's been instrumental in bringing just stewardship, Andy, like pouring and loving on your people and not being in this kind of who's going to take from me mode. And you're just focused on loving and pouring and growing, and whether they stay or they go, so be it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's while you're here, you're mine, and you're my opportunity to change.
Yeah.
In your life. But, and I know our business has a lot of turnover. It's for some reason it's in the industry, but I really do not like turnover. But I think a lot of turnover happens because they don't find that passion in our industry like we did early on. So, my job is to make sure they find that passion, make them successful. I tell my managers all the time is if recruiters successful, sales are successful, everybody's happy. Is when they're not successful is when they'll leave.
And turnover, like you said, like any service business, if you're a financial advisor, which is 1 out of 10, actually financial advisor is worse. It's like, trying to convince someone to shift their 401k professionally is like, that's an animal. I mean, that's a lot of energy. But for the longest time, if it was Andy Moss, Matt Furman in the mid 2000s, late 90s, and you're like, hey, here's a phone, computer, go develop. The emotional energy and social engineering creativity it takes to be successful, really only 2 out of 10 people are like wired like that, know? And so, you're going to have a high turnover. But then when you start hiring people of the right core values for your organization, when you hire people of, who are driven, and have that will to win inside. And then when you give them the tools, the technology, like 3D IQ and other tools to like really wrap your business to make it a little bit, not easier, but you elevate and you lift and you cover, then your turnover goes down. And so our turnover has gone from, call it 3 out of 10, maybe 2 out of 10.
Yep.
It's flipped the other way. We're keeping 8 out of 10, maybe 9 at this point.
So when you say you're keeping 9 to 10, are you contributing to giving your recruiters the tools, loving on them more? Talk about some of the environmental changes you've made. I mean, because I call myself old school because I came from the Aerotech tree and, process, turnover high. But I'm like you. I want the keep 8 out of 10, what are some things that you'd pour into me or other leaders listening to this?
Stewardship is super important, which is just you love on the managers that are sitting right next to you. You allow them to love on the people reporting to them. And it's an inside out approach, right? Where you're, relationship with God, love, outpour, right, to the people right next to you. And then they love on, and it just transcends to the organization that way. So you do that, continuous training, right?
Yep.
The assumption, why do you go to church every, Sunday? Because you forget, right? You're just constantly training every week. You never stop training, some new little thing here or there. And then you give them the technology necessary to help move things along faster in the process. And if you mix all of that into a bowl, you'll watch your turnover, just core values, love on them, training, technical tools, and you'll keep 9 out of 10 every time.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, this has been great. I really appreciate you jumping on with me with Staffing Stories. I just get a kick out of hearing where everybody came from, what they're dealing with now, because there are a lot of common threads between a lot of us that are in ownership of staffing and recruiting. But again, thanks for taking the time to be with us. You're awesome. And I really thank you.
Awesome, man. Thank you.
The Staffing Stories podcast is brought to you by 3DIQ, founded by recruiters for recruiters. 3DIQ's industry-leading product suite complements your submission process in Bullhorn from start to finish and helps you deliver a cutting-edge customer experience. Triple your placements with our powerful resume submission platform, candidate marketing, and client portal. Visit 3diq.com/stories to learn more.